Fight the Fade is back with a new album, Isolationist, their first album in 2 years following the APOPHYSITIS release back in 2022, and In Love and Hope and Peace in 2020, around the time where the band joined the Fixed record label, known for a lot of electronic hard rock bands, and they definitely fit into the aesthetic of it, especially with the way they've been pushing their sound. Fight the Fade just used to kind of do more standard rock stuff, but as they've been adapting more electronic elements, they've definitely given themselves a bit more of a unique edge over a lot of the other smaller hard rock bands trying to find their footing. So Isolationist is an album that I gotta be honest, I don't think I was quite as impressed with this on first listen as I was with APOPHYSITIS, but I'll go through the tracks and tell you what I think. The Storm being an interlude, just intro, I don't need to really talk about that one. Eye the Hurricane was one of the first singles, and to me, I think it's decent, but it feels below average, or just around average for them. It's just one or the other. It feels kind of bare bone and just like a formula we've already heard before from the band, so I'm not really hooked onto this one per se. Eye the Hurricane's not bad by any means, but compared to what we've had previously, there's just not really much to it. The hook isn't very strong, the riffs just don't really stand out. It's kind of a whatever track in my opinion. Gangrene, this one's a bit better. I do like the heavier edge to it, and I like the kind of weird vocal delivery in some case, and I think the instrumentation, while simple, does have some good ideas, but Gangrene in my opinion is just not really that strong either. I like the fact they're kind of pushing a bit of heavy into this softer idea, but it just makes for probably one of the more just confusing experimental tracks, I guess. Like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate what they're going for here, but Gangrene just isn't really hooking to me in the way that I wish it would. Stranger, I think, is one that I kind of appreciate a bit more than these first two. It has a little bit more of the classic sound from Fight the Fade, and I must say, well, again, it's not one I'm big on. I think Stranger definitely has enough to offer to kind of feel like it belongs on the album and gives enough an impression at least, whereas the first two tracks, I just think they're kind of something I'd expect from Fight the Fade, albeit Gangrene's a bit more creative, but I just find that again these songs to just feel like a rinse and repeat formula that they've stuck to. Alive Again is one I quite like. I like the energy on this one. I think the ending actually makes this one of my more enjoyed tracks. I think it's pretty interesting what they go for here, and it's it's just a good track. That's all I have to say for that one. Set You Free is the first non-single, because almost everything was released from this before the album, which is something I'm not really big fan of when bands released almost everything. I get releasing numerous singles to help a song chart is a good way, or at least a song to do well, but it's not interesting when almost everything's there and you only got like one or two new tracks. There's literally 3 tracks that are new on this, and I'm not counting the interlude because it's just a little bit of noise. But Set You Free, for one of the non-album singles, certainly isn't anything crazy in my opinion. This one focuses more on just a basic electronic soft rock approach, and I like the idea of it, but it just kind of overstays its welcome, and I think the jazz elements they incorporate into the into this as well, like having a sort of saxophone bit, it just feels very forced in, like it doesn't need to be there, but it is. It kind of ruins the flow a bit. Isolationist, this one is where I'm starting to recognise the album's formula, and it does actually start to pick up here, in my opinion. I think after the first bunch of tracks, Isolationist is one that's kind of more catchy. I like the hook on it, I like the instrumentation, the intro, and I just like the kind of heavier vibe it has. Isolationist is a pretty good track, and I think it definitely is probably one of the stronger tracks, so it makes sense to have the album called that, because I quite like it. I think it's pretty interesting. Next, Sunrise, probably my favourite of the singles. That little eerie sort of synth that occurs throughout the track might be annoying at times, but I do think it's still fun, and the chorus is just, another fun one as well. I think the way the song drives is just slightly more zany. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of Stratosphere from the previous album, just something a little bit more upbeat and fun, and I quite like it. It's quite good. Scratching, featuring Daedric. Yeah, I wasn't really big on this one. I don't really remember it. It's not that it's bad in any way. It's just one of the more forgettable tracks, in my opinion. The feature's fine. I think they do a good job of what they're working with, but the song as a whole is just one of the more forgettable ones, in my opinion. Quarantine, another single I just wasn't really that big on. I don't really remember it. It's probably, again, another forgettable track. I like some of the elements it brings to it, and I think the ending is probably one of my favourite parts, just the way it all comes together, but this is just another just kind of average song from Fight the Fate, and I felt that with the last two tracks. Let You Know, I think this one is actually a good song. I quite like it. It's got a nice bit of liveliness to it, and it definitely used the electronics into a fun element. And Revolution, I like the fact that this one tries to push some very heavy breakdowns to it, and then they just ended off the track off just like a Sleep Token breakdown ending on something like Take Me Back to Eden, just the way it just goes into this sort of genty sounding guitar, stops, then releases more gent just to thrill that breakdown feel. It's definitely a structured album compared to something like APOPHYSITIS, where I feel like it's a bunch of different songs that work together to really create a fun album. And I must say, APOPHYSITIS and maybe In Love and Hope and Peace just easily beat this record, because there's a lot less of a dynamic that feels solid here. There's definitely some ideas they had, but I think they just kind of ran with the first thing that came to the head with it, whereas APOPHYSITIS felt like there was a lot more crafted to it. You had some really strong power onto that one, like Not Enough is a really fun song. Matter of Time is definitely another catchy, fun song. Even the first bunch of songs just deliver, and you even get some really heavy ones like Buried, which is just almost entirely unclean, so I really enjoy. But yeah, I mean, that album being a lot heavy, and it has some kind of electronic-y hard rock elements. This album just kind of feels it's playing into a lighter version of it, but just going with any idea they throw to the wall, and they don't quite see if it sticks. They just kind of run with it, and that's my biggest gripe with Isolationist. Like, it's not a bad album. There's not a single song I think's bad, but there's hardly any songs I think is that good, to be honest. It just accounts for a very, very meh album. It's not really that decent either. I guess it's just okay. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5 for that case. Like, it's not a bad album, but it's not far from it, just with how little engaged I was with it. It's just kind of a bit of a barren listen, but that's my review. Hope you'll enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next video.